Monday, March 18th at 7 o'clock, CPC meeting in the auditorium. This is being recorded.
Thanks. We're going to open up the floor to public comments. As you know, this is a, go ahead, Michelle.
Michelle Pratt, 152 Berkshire Avenue. Thank you again, all you folks, for coming out once again on this issue. We very much appreciate your thoughtful consideration. I'll keep it really short because I did send out emails to everyone with sharing of the information that I've learned in the research I've been doing over the last months. So I hope that that was helpful. And I think everybody's come to the realization, again, the support from the town for this project has been huge, but also the fact that I think no matter what side of this you're on, nobody wants the town to bond for this. So I think that's the unity that we can all share tonight in saying that we stand here saying we don't want the town to bond for this. So it's appropriate for the CPC, it's appropriate based on our open space goals, it's appropriate based on what the CPC is here for. And so we're hoping that this decision will really be appropriate for this project tonight. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Deb, 3 Shore Road. Citizens Restoring Conemaugh also thanks you very much for reconvening. Our members are very much in favor of saving North Pond. We're not in favor of taxes, so if we can use the CPC, the members will be very grateful. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Andrea Pelmore, Vining Road. No, I'm a little bit confused. I'm a little bit late coming into this, but my understanding is the CPC is going to put up extra money that we don't already have towards this lake.
The request is for a bonding through CPC.
Okay, so it's money that you guys will have to pay back regardless anyways.
Correct.
So taxpayers still are going to
Well,
pick it up.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure about, what do you mean, we'll have to,
CPC is going to take the bond for the 1.2 million?
if the
it
vote
goes
goes
through?
in that direction, yes,
So
correct.
who pays for the CPC? Don't I, the taxpayer, pay the CPC?
Correct.
So the taxpayer is still going to pay for the bond?
Oh, yeah, it's still taxpayer money, it doesn't matter which
So I'm
pocket
not
it comes
for
out of.
Okay. Thank you.
But your taxes will not go up. Your taxes you're already paying.
I paid the 3%, but I would, if we spend the money now, hold on. If we spend the money now, then that means things coming up, will we have money for things next year?
Yes,
Yeah, you have money for next year?
Well, you won't have as much.
right.
So
There-
some other projects will go by the wayside or not get done. Correct.
There are 2 areas of the CPC funds that are set aside. One is for the historical portion of the CPC, and the other is for the housing funds in CPC. Other areas would then possibly be affected, but housing and historical funds would be untouched.
And also the matching funds that come from the state will not be affected. Those are also going to be rolled into our fund that will be able to fund other projects as well. Just the 3% surcharge will be used for the bonding.
So the money that we're going to collect for next year, that we haven't collected yet, we're already going to spend to save the lake?
Not all of it, no.
Well, we haven't looked at how, there's 5, 10, 15, 20, 30-year bonding matrices that we've looked at. Okay, so interest at 5 years is probably $180,000, and interest at 30 years is $750,000, $800,000, somewhere around there for the interest. So that's,
So the money that the North Pond people have raised to date isn't enough to purchase the property as they wanted to?
that's correct.
Correct.
And there's somebody else that's also interested in the North Pond, that we're bidding against somebody else who's interested? There's another party, or we're at? It's not open for purchase?
Not yet.
Maybe somebody else will come up with the 5 million, you can get it for what you already have raised, and we can have it sell it. Perfect world. No, I'm still not for it, thank you.
Go ahead.
Bernadette Oliver, Griffin Road, West Southfield. I am also a member of the Four Seasons South Pond Beach Association, which is located in Southwick. From what I understand, and I did a little research, if I'm looking at this correctly, the tax rate for Southwick for the year 2019 is actually going down 3 cents. Am I correct? Because you guys, the finance board, the representatives have done a great job. We're getting a new fire truck. We've got the roads that are gonna be needed in town. Okay, so thank you very much for representing what the people want. And your taxes for 2019 are going down, 3 cents, okay? So.
Did you
the
say
main
you-
goal-
Did you say you were from Suffield?
Yes, but I
Okay.
pay Southwick, pay Southwick property taxes, I also have family, and I work for Southwick businesses. I grew up on Berkshire Avenue, I went to Southwick High School, I live on South Pond now, but I literally am the border, okay? But I do pay Southwick property taxes, so it gives me a right to speak here, does it not? I can't vote on the vote tomorrow, which is why I'm very passionate about bringing the information to everyone that may not understand the issue. So I can speak, correct? Right? Okay. Okay,
It's a public
so
meeting.
The month, and I'm so sorry, I didn't get my glasses. Okay, so sorry, I should have done this first, so sorry, so sorry. Okay, so the main idea of, everybody is saying that, oh, it's for the lakes, it's for the boaters. It's not for the boaters, that's not what this is about. Saving North Pond, this is from the Southwick, the Southwick Open Space and Recreational Plan of 2012, okay? The main goal is to maintain the ecological integrity of the aquatic ecosystems and protect the quality and quantity of surface and groundwater drinking water supplies. Now, Southwick put in sewers in a lot of the area. However, they don't have them all around the lake. And the aquifer, which is the the Great Brook Aquifer, runs all underneath our town and underneath this piece of property that we want to preserve, okay? Now, it has natural filtration, and I'm not a scientist, and I do apologize, but from what I understand, this aquifer underlies 1/3 of Southwick, okay? And its goal, it's the town's water supply for the public water, as well as the wells and everything else. And it also serves the neighboring communities of West Springfield and Westfield, okay? Now, there's 5 open space goals, right? There's 5 goals for open space, which is recreational and open space, right? Maintain the ecological, does everyone understand what happens when the water, if they put houses in there and they are not going to be hooked up to a sewer system, there's not plans for a sewer system in that area right now. If they put houses, those are all going to filter down into the aquifer, which runs underneath our whole town, and it supplies everywhere. So if we don't protect that water supply, then our water is going to be damaged, and we're going to have to go buy clean water somewhere else. So there's going to incur more costs to the town, and that's just the water issue, which is the main issue. You don't think so? Okay, well, you should read and come to meetings, because you really should be.
Isn't the aquifer across the street over in year round?
The Great Brook Aquifer runs under 1/3 of Southwick, okay? Goes all underneath the town. 1/3 of the town of Southwick. This aquifer goes
I don't think 10
through.
houses on the lake are gonna damage our water.
If they're putting more septic into the water system, then yes, they are.
Something has changed tremendously since the day I.
They shouldn't
Okay, I'm
have
not gonna argue
to
with you.
go back and forth with each other.
Okay,
They should just
now,
direct you.
The
Okay,
other thing that I
thanks.
wanted to bring up was the fact that, okay, we want to protect the water, we want to protect the open space of Southwick to preserve Southwick's scenic, cultural, and historical character. We are a recreational community, we want to remain small. And, the open space also purchased land for the Rails for Trails. Now look at the huge success that has been, okay? That has drawn in people from southern Hampshire County and northern Connecticut. So that's bringing more people in to buy things from the Southwick businesses to help with the tax offset. And if the CPC bonds this is something that the town people want, and it's in the original plans for the town of Southwick talked about this piece of property, to preserve this piece of property, because it's huge. And you'll have it forever. The taxes are not going to go up if the CPC bonds it. And Ruth mentioned something about the additional 100 houses that are already going in and approved. Those households are going to increase the tax revenue. So I don't understand. One other point, and I do apologize, I'm going on. One other point that I did hear through this was that the people on the board feel that this piece of property is overvalued. Well, that's crazy, because if I understand the figures right, 1 acre is $80,000. If we break it down to the purchase price now, and there's land for sale in Southwick, just land for $200,000. So you can't say that $80,000 an acre is overpriced when land in Southwick is going for $200,000.
$80,000 an acre?
No,
It was 2-acre lots, I believe it was.
And all of those condos buildable?
That was just an
Okay,
estimate.
ma'am, could you wrap this up and don't engage?
Okay, I am. I just wanted to say that it's not an undervalued piece of property. The seller is very adamant about what she's asking for it, but what she's asking for it is a legitimate cost. It's not fair. It's not a fair market value. So anyway, I just thank you for your efforts.
The appraisals were done on a best possible use, taking into consideration virtually nothing else.
Okay. You know what, even if you if you do the math and you share the math with the people about the number of lots that they could possibly, the minimum number of lots that they could get from that land, it's still not undervalued. I mean, overvalued. Thank you. for your time.
Gentleman in the back.
Marcus Phelps, 28 Depot Street. I have some numbers here, which I have already provided to the Finance Committee. I'm a trained forester and I have a master's degree in regional planning. I was the town planner for 5 years, and I've known about this property for quite a while. I did this analysis based on the zoning and what would be allowed to be constructed on the 62 acres. And 35 lots, if very reasonable, can be produced from this property under a flexible residential development. And what I've done here is calculate the cost to the community for 35 lots being developed, 35 new households in the town, and the potential revenue, looking at actual property values on the lake and also property values set back from the lake, such as Woodland Ridge and Lexington Circle. So that produces revenue. When you compare the revenue that would come from the property taxes to the town and the cost, the town will lose approximately $149,000 every year if this land is developed for 35 lots.
Is that a guy in the back or a girl? That's a woman. Okay, ma'am?
Leo March, 27 Granville Road. I just like to point out that many of the places that the CPC is funded is non-usable by the town of Southwick because the owners have the right to restrict who goes on that land. So I know farmers work hard and they don't want people on their land, but at the same time, if you can fund something of that nature, then I don't see why you can't fund something that will give access to all to this particular parcel of land. And I'd also like to point out, as I have in previous meetings, that it is one of the last areas in the state that has that type of grassland and tree, the certain type of tree that grows there. So it should be preserved because it is the last one in the state, and we need to do that for that reason as well, which is also the mission of your board. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Nicole Manning, 42 Lake Street. I live on Mount Pond. I would like to tell you how beautiful Mount Pond is. To see the eagles flying by and the trees changing color in fall is amazing. When you wake up in the morning, it's so beautiful. If we don't save it, all that goes away. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Joanna Blank, 38 Crestwood Road. There's been a group of people that have been posting a lot of, a couple of the Southwood Facebook forums, so I'm here to get accurate information. First of all, you guarantee that if you bond this through the CPC, there'll be no increase to taxes for the people? Secondly, out of this land that's available, 35 houses, how much is really buildable? Is a perk test even going to pass or fail? So,
35 houses. You just
Mhm.
said.
but they haven't perked the land yet, have they?
35 based on the land.
But have they perked the land? It has to be perked.
No.
It's pretty sandy soil.
And my last question is, if you purchase this land, what additional expenses are you anticipating to clear out the property? Are you planning on purchasing porta potties? Are you planning on picnic tables, clearing the trails, all these extra funds? What extra costs are you anticipating this if you purchase it?
Most of the trails that we have maintained in town are done by volunteers, so I would assume that that would be the same for that parcel as well. Porta potties, through our conservation restriction held by the state, would probably be allowable, but right now there's not a plan for that, and we would probably incur the cost of maintaining those.
It's about $6,000 a year per porta potty. And the tax loss,
There's a lot of, we go to a wildlife management area to watch that property. And I can't tell you the amount of trash that we haul out of there. There's also chassis of vehicles on that property that are gonna have to come out. There's a lot of down trees. Then you talk about opening it up to the hunters. Are the hunters and the trail people gonna all mingle together? Wildlife management area there is, and it's been spoken of that this land is supposed to be used by the hunters and the, yes.
anyone else?
Lane Peteroy from the Franklin Land Trust. The land will have a conservation restriction over it from the Department of Fish and Game that will allow hiking, hunting, and fishing, and other recreations, bird watching. The safety zone buffers between 150 feet off the roads, 500 feet from any dwellings, makes it so it's actually a very small area that will be posted for, that would be allowed hunting in it. That is just like in the wildlife management area. That is part of the conservation restriction. That is why the state is funding additional money as well to help conserve that land. I would say that 75% of the land will be, due to these safety zones, not open for hunting, and they will be properly posted. So, and hunting is a few weeks a year. People are careful. You might wear your orange. There's no hunting on Sundays. It's generally a very compatible use with hiking, and people just being more aware. And I know
My husband hunts on the wildlife management area, and this past year was horrible. There were people out there walking their dogs off leash. There were people jogging. He saw people out there in camouflage attire, jogging. So they're not wearing orange out there. It's very unsafe.
Well, I was saying that people, if they're hiking or walking during hunting season, that it's really a wise thing to do to wear orange. No, to wear orange if you are the walker or the hiker. I walk in the woods during hunting season. I wear an orange hat or an orange vest. I stay out of the woods during opening day, those types of things. So I think in general it's compatible. You have to be a little aware. There's a couple of weeks a year when you don't have other people in the woods with you. But this property, the remainder of what will be open, if we save it, there's only a small portion of it that will actually be kind of extended from the wildlife management area that will have hunting. The rest will be off because of the safety zone.
And do you know if they'll clear cut like they did the rest of the wildlife management?
No, the town is going to own this land. It will probably stay forested. They did that to increase the habitat of the grassland. The state will not be going in and opening this for grassland. This will be the wooden buffer, the shrub that's going to be the edge habitat in the woods that will be compatible and helpful to the species that migrate from the water out to the stream. There will be no clear cutting in there. There will be no grassland created. It's going to just blend into the grassland that they're creating now. So they won't be doing that. That will be up to the town. The town will own it and have the management authority to do what it wants with it, and it's going to be forested, trails maintained, safety, maybe trees cut if they're falling over, but it's going to remain a forested area.
So you're not planning on any additional costs, like at Wally Park, or more money was requested for lights, or, so you're not planning on requesting any more money?
There are costs associated with the project. There is a tax loss on the project of, right today, it's around $14,000 a year. Again, $6,000 for porta potties, and there was one mentioned, and then they said two. And when I talked to Dave Riccardi before he retired, he said it was about $1,000 more for a police presence.
Excuse me, are there porta potties on the bike trail?
I don't know. So there will be some additional cost, maybe $25,000, $30,000 a year.
30,000 a year?
Mhm.
That's five, that's minimal.
It's not. I did my research. Yes?
Thank you. Art Pennell, North Vining Road. In the original appraisal of the property, and as well as the application from the Franklin Land Trust, it mentions endangered species in and around that property. I'm not aware that there's been any kind of formal assessment of the habitat there. Maybe there has been, but I'm not aware of it. My concern is that there is actually an extensive habitat there that would put a considerable amount of that property off limits for development, and hence possibly affect the sale price of it. So if somebody could comment on the endangered species and what's been done to analyze the habitat there, I'd appreciate it.
Go ahead, Dick.
Rich Hubbard with the Land Trust. I'm glad you asked that question because there's a lot of misinformation that's being thrown around about the appraisal. This evening it was even mentioned that all it considered was highest and best use. You determine highest and best use based upon all the natural resource values, zoning, wetlands, wildlife habitat, where there might be restrictions based upon wildlife. All those things are built into the appraisal and considered in the appraisal. So when you say all it considers is highest and best use, that comes from all that information flowing into the appraisal. So it's not right to be putting that out there like that. So all those things are considered in the appraisal. They're listed out in the index. There are addendums in there that talk about all of that. So it is factored into the development proposal.
Can I
Go ahead.
follow up?
Yep.
I would disagree with you. Right in the appraisal, it states quite clearly that the appraisal did not take into consideration environmental considerations on the property. It
That's not
says
true.
right in the appraisal.
That's not true. It
So
has
I
to.
would strongly disagree with you.
What
And I
it
still have
says-
my concern about the
So
value
they
of the
look at
property.
things like soil. So for instance, the question about a perk. They don't go out and do perks. Appraisers don't go out and do a bunch of perks. They look at the soils and make a determination whether the soils are likely to support septic systems. And so there's always a caveat in there about certain things like that, but the appraiser looks at that stuff. It's not done in a vacuum.
No, we didn't.
Well,
I disagree. Read the appraisal.
Tom, go right ahead.
Tom McLaughlin, 22 Klein Road. I'd like to introduce a term here regarding the appraisal. They're done in a conceptual nature.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So those lots aren't fact. It's
How can they
purely
not be?
conceptual.
That's absolutely true.
Typically, a property is going to sell at a discount
It's a,
from that full appraisal.
no, that's considered in the cost too, in the value of the property too. They consider the developer's profit in that appraisal. The developer's not going to develop the land and expect to break even. They're going to expect to make 15, 20% profit potentially, and that's also built into the appraisal. They are absolutely conceptual, absolutely conceptual.
That's why they typically sell at a discount from that figure.
No, not true. I've done this work for 35 years.
I've watched
These
them.
appraisals are pretty good at predicting what the value of that property is going to be. So.
Could I say something?
Go ahead, John.
You don't have to spend a dime on this property unless the town agrees to it. We don't have to put porta potties in there, we don't have to make a parking lot, we don't have to do a darn thing to the place. But we do have to preserve it, in my opinion.
Gene?
Okay, if the property's worth, G. Ray Pelmore, Farming Road, if the property's worth $5 million, let's say, is that what it's going for?
It was-
So all the properties that have bought that, their property taxes will go up to reflect all of that work? Because I know if some big houses were built next to my house, my property value goes up because my worth is more. So if North Pond is now worth $5 million for that parcel, that 35 acres or whatever it is, do those property taxes go up to help feed that?
That's an assessor's decision. The values of the houses on North Pond might go up just because they're looking out on permanently conserved land.
Well, it's been the same land since I'm 54 years old. I mean, we used to go down there when I was a kid, and all we did was drink beer and make out, but what I saw last year, that's what's still happening. So anyways, I'm just wondering, if it's $5 million, will that, like you said, Lexington, where the aquifer is, and North Pond, so those properties will reflect the value now of that pond, so they're going to take some of the brunt of this?
Again, that's an assessor's question.
That would be
be surprised if
Assessor.
I wouldn't be surprised if an argument could be made that maybe the values of those properties are going up a little bit, because all of a sudden you can tell a buyer that you're going to be looking out on permanently conserved land forever. That property is never going to be looking out on house lots. And that's obviously a positive thing in the marketplace. So it might be that those go up. I don't know, that's an assessor's decision.
I would hope that they would go up, but I'm still not for it.
I can speak to that.
Ma'am?
My brother lives on the lake, and his taxes have gone up considerably, actually. So I'm pretty sure that that's already been reflected, the cost of that has already been reflected in those who have lakefront property taxes have actually gone up. Whereas me living up on the hill, my taxes have actually gone down several $100s in this last year. Well, my brother's have gone up because he owns lakefront property. So I believe that that's already been figured into the assessment that lakefront property has at this time.
Okay, we'll take a couple more, ma'am. Go ahead.
Tracy Metzler, 155 South Woodland Street. All I have to say is, I've lived in Southwood most of my life. I grew up, went through Southwood schools, and I remember civics class, and what we talked about was the lakes, and how they were the foundations of this town. And I think historically, it's so important that we keep part of the lakes is what they are, because, you know, you talk about the notch. Why is the notch the notch? Because of the lakes. So that's all I have to say. I have nothing to gain or lose, but I enjoy the history of this town, and I'm so proud to be part of this town, and I just want you to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to close public comments and get on with our meeting. We have minutes from January 31st and minutes from February 13th. These should be in your folder. Let's take January 31st. Everybody all set with that?
Yep.
All right. Any corrections? Okay. Sid, do you have a question?
No.
Okay,
I'm
all right.
starting to go around. I don't know if you have it.
I have it here.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, the
I
signature
figured we'd
page.
wait to vote on it before we sign it.
I know.
All right, so could we have a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes?
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I got to abstain, I was absent that day.
Okay, and anybody opposed? Okay, so What's it? 801. Okay. You want to handle this one, Chris?
Yeah, we're looking at the minutes of February 13th. Take a minute to look that over. If anybody has any comments as they look through, they can feel free to comment as they go through. Cindy, I have just a few grammatical changes. Well, instead of get public comment, I wanted to just change that to take public comment.
Oh, okay.
All right, and then we have some buts at the beginning of sentences. Just want to get rid of those.
On the second page?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, I see it, yep.
Okay. And then,
How many bucks did you, 3?
I have 2, and I put a however in.
Okay.
You
No,
can
that's
use
fine.
mine. Well, I'm a teacher, so sorry.
So better to be a however than a what?
Okay,
Then,
that's fine.
yeah. It's on the public comments. Michelle Pat it's 152, not 52, so that's just a typo probably. I know where she lives. Yes.
Oh,
I know where she lives. You lived there for a while too. So you lived there for a while too.
Yeah.
Entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So motion?
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
1 abstain?
Abstain.
2 abstain. You can pass that down. You should go look at that one.
thank you.
You didn't have a red pencil.
I don't like to use red, that's me.
Okay, Tom, you want to come up and we'll talk? Is Ron with you? Oh, good. Come on up, Ron. So we talked a little bit about this.
Sit down.
Oh, yes, please, please. With Barbara Hobson, if you recall, in our January 31st meeting, where the the state and the feds do an automatic reappraisal of a project if it has gone on for more than a year and hasn't been completed. And Barbara had made mention that she had never seen a disparity as large as this particular disparity. It's important to note that this was generated by the act itself. It was not generated by Mr. McLaughlin or anybody else. It's an automatic part of the law. So the property went up significantly. Do you have the figures?
Sure.
Ron?
Yeah.
All right.
Went up from 675 fair market value to 905. Based on a transaction right next door, almost a bookend comp, where it sold for nearly that.
Okay. And the agricultural value went up a little bit, right?
That remained the same,
Oh,
230 in both cases.
Okay.
So the difference in the two appraisals is the difference in the figure.
So the restriction value had gone from 445, the agricultural preservation restriction value, and then went to 675.
Okay, so it went from 445 to 675.
Yeah.
Okay. So the difference being $230,000?
Correct.
Okay. Which is obviously significant. Let me I got an email from Barbara, I don't know if you had one of those as well, what the other sources of funding that she's looking
Sure.
at?
I can explain that.
Go ahead,
And
please,
Tom-
Ron.
Tom can add to it as well. We're looking at potentially requesting additional federal dollars towards this project through what is called the Agricultural Lands Easement Program. It's an uncertainty whether or not we'll get the request, but it's an item that we're looking to pursue as a possibility to bring additional dollars to bear on the project. And also, in speaking with Tom, we looked at the tax credit program, but we're not sure if that would be a good fit because the tax credit is limited to a 50% reimbursement on the value of a donation on the land. So also it has the potential that it could put the project out further in a time frame for us to close it, which we need to close this project within a short period of time.
By the end of June, is it?
Preferably within this calendar year, but June has been the targeted date that we've been
Okay.
shooting for.
Okay, so okay.
June of 2019?
Correct.
Okay, so MDR is in at $400,000 and $500. What was the
445.
445.
Right.
I don't know why she's got this here. So the town's share was originally 45,000?
It was
Yes.
Or, okay.
10% would be
Right,
44.
or 44.5, okay. So, I don't know, you probably haven't seen this, so she's looking to get 67,000, which would be the other 23,000 from us, which would be the difference in the 230,000. The 10% would be ours. And then she's looking for 115,000 from supplemental NRCS. What is that, Ron?
That's the federal program.
That's the feds, okay. And then you're saying the land tax credit?
May not be a fit for this particular.
Okay.
Yes, I think we got to take that out of it.
Okay, all right. So that, you're pretty sure that's not going to fly at all? Okay. So we're still waiting on 115,000. And the balance would be about 92,000? After that, that's really what she's showing me here.
I think it's 115, isn't it?
If we get the federal program to do 115, and the difference would be the 150.
Yeah, total.
Okay, I think that's adding the 23,000 that,
Right.
yeah, that would be
Back it
adding the
up.
23,000. Okay, so 115 is really what we're looking at for the town share to come up and preserve the property. Tom, do you want to address the board for any reason? I mean, you want to?
Well, I'd be happy to answer any questions, to clarify the figures. I know it's a little, kind of extenuating circumstances. I don't want to look like I'm up to anything. I didn't create the appraisals or the figures. I'm just reacting to a change in the market. Obviously, no one wants to discount their land, yet at the same time, nobody ever got enough for it. It's up to the town or this committee to decide whether they want it preserved. And I can live with the decision, and I'll respect it either way,
So how much additional would we have to?
Right now, we'd have to commit to 115.
This is peanuts compared to North Pond.
We'd have to commit to 115 right now. But there is a chance that that other 115 doesn't come in from the federal government on that program. Am I correct, Ron?
Correct.
Okay. So,
And if that doesn't happen, then what is it?
Well-
230?
it could be 230. If Tom elects not to go with it, then it's a 3-year cooling off period for the state, and it's a 3-year process to get this through a second time, which I think it would probably, it's been approved once already, but I think it would be approved again. But it's 6 years, Tom, and
I could be dead.
well, we talked about this, rather than, and I have a lot of respect for Tom, because we've had several conversations, and it's not a situation where, he's trying to hold us up or anything else like that. It's just business, and,
That's right, it's just a business decision, and as I say, it's that for you too. And I can live with it either way.
So
Any comments?
How much land are we talking about here?
51
Well,
acres?
about 58 acres in its
58
entirety, the whole parcel.
Okay, but you refer to the agricultural, broken down between an agricultural portion and a non-agricultural portion? Did I hear that correctly before, or did I misunderstand?
Well, how they come up with a valuation is they look at what you could sell it for residential development and what you could sell it for as a farm.
Okay.
And the monies that you're paid is basically the profit differential. And that puts the agriculture restriction on it, so it can never be developed, and it's always in agriculture.
So by law, we cannot stick with the original agreement, that's what you're telling us. By law, we cannot.
It was never agreed upon.
Right, it was never agreed upon.
was-
Tom has not accepted that.
It was proposed,
Oh, okay.
So,
so.
So we had proposed a $44,500 participation previously.
That was the 10% of
Right.
the original
Now we're
APR
looking
value.
at proposing $115,000 participation.
in total, right.
In total.
So it'd be another
Right, another-
$70,000,
Whatever
whatever.
it is, yeah, 70,000. So 58 acres, we're dealing with adding a little more than $1,000 per acre to the value of the project. And so instead of getting it for under $1,000 an acre, it's going to run under $2,000 an acre. Okay.
And if this was done today, say this was the first time he was coming to us, it would only be about $67,000 because it would be the 10% of the.
No, if I was coming to you today, it'd be with the appraisal for 905.
905, so
Less
it would be 10, so it would be 10% of that.
No,
Right.
905 less, that's the retail,
Less the
or that's the
230.
residential, minus the 234.
It'd be 10% of that.
So the differential would be,
So it'd be about
$70,000.
$70,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 70, or 77,000, right.
Okay, but what we're asking for today is 115, so there's a 40,000, roughly $40,000 difference.
Into what,
So this isn't on top of the 45 that we've already,
we haven't expended any money yet. We are committed to the 45 if Tom, or 44.5 if Tom took the deal. But, which he's not gonna do because there's such a huge difference. Normally, what Barbara's told me is that the difference is $10,000 or $20,000, and they just take a tax write-off, the seller usually does. This is an anomaly. She's said in 14 years, she's never seen anything like this. So,
In about a year, you saw a 51% increase in the value.
yeah.
And that was based on 2 comparable sales that occurred within that year.
You know, one of them right next door, it's nearly a bookend property, as good a comp as you'll ever see. You know.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Building
They're
houses.
farming it in the interim.
But they're gonna build houses on it. They sold it for residential development.
You know, down the road, who knows?
So, worst case scenario, Ron, if we came up and voted for the 115, and what happens if the other federal money doesn't come through?
At this point, that's the only other source of funds that we're looking at. So at that point, we would have to sit down.
You'd have to make a decision, like,
Or you can kick in the rest.
or we could kick in the rest.
How generous of you.
Then I have a question for you.
Sure.
So if we approve this and the town approved this for 115,000, and the feds did not come in with the money, okay? There could be a motion made at the town meeting, on the town meeting floor, to increase that to make up for that 115 that wasn't coming in.
I think that would be up to the moderator who runs the town meeting.
Okay.
However, I would suggest to you that appropriating more money than what's on a town warrant may not be looked at as though it's within the scope. If you're gonna appropriate less, because people know what the top amount is.
Right.
That's usually germane to the article and within the scope.
Okay.
So a motion to amend to a lesser amount is usually approved.
Copacetic, okay.
To a higher amount, some people who weren't coming who didn't come to the town meeting may have come if they knew it was a certain dollar amount that was higher.
Sure.
Again, it's up to the moderator. I've seen it go both ways as to
Okay.
whether or not that would be an acceptable motion to amend.
would there also be a difference if it were from the general fund as opposed to or from the community preservation? Would it not have to come back to community preservation to revote first before it goes to be amended on the floor?
I believe it would.
So that might be a hiccup.
Okay. Any thoughts? I mean, so,
It's been around since 2018, this project?
yeah, yeah. We're under a little bit of pressure with this because, as Ron pointed out, they're trying to get this done in June, and we have to make a decision tonight because we're trying to get it on the town warrant if we're going to participate at a higher level than the 44.5.
Our putting it on the town warrant does not pass it. Obviously, the voters have to pass that.
Correct.
So it would, if we put this on the town warrant, it would merely be just facilitating that vote to take place, as opposed to denying the option for that vote to take place. So I guess I would look at this, could we define a motion? Could we define what a motion would be and see whether we would choose to vote on that?
Didn't we vote on this last year and it went to town meeting?
Right,
At the original.
At the
Yeah,
original
the
one,
original
right.
one,
But
okay.
he didn't accept it.
And then the year came up, and so they automatically did the appraisal by law. So that's when it changed the dynamic of everything.
Okay. He didn't accept that.
So the motion would be for 115.
That would be that would be one motion. Ron, if we took a motion for 230, and then the feds came in, where would we be on that? Then we could reduce it on the floor.
You could reduce it.
Okay. All right. So I think those are your options if you want to make a motion, either the 230 or the 115, and hope that the feds come back in with the other 115.
I'll make a motion for the 115.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor? Or, oh, wait, I'm sorry. Any other discussion? No. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed? Any abstentions? I'm going to vote aye as well, so. So unanimous?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's hope that that's good.
Okay, you got a big job to do, Ron.
Make the case. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Tom.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Good to see you.
Gene, next on our agenda.
Good evening.
Hello.
First and foremost, thank you for allowing me to be here. Been working in the old cemetery for quite some time now. I've spent hundreds, if not well over 1,000 hours over there. I thought I spoke with all the right people. I've had Lee Hambert on the Historical Commission go through the old cemetery with me, as well as he's come over my house for a number of times and shared stuff with me. I've gone through. I think what's important to note is that the cemetery up until last year has been totally neglected for well over 41 years. There's a number of leaners, there's a number of headstones that are damaged, and trees falling over. In fact, from the windstorm last week, a limb came down and took out another monument. I've had a lot of, if you would have told me I'd be working in cemeteries 2 years ago, I would have thought you would be out of your mind. But, however, I strongly feel that we have a responsibility to preserve history and ensure the veterans and the notable citizens that are in that old cemetery, that history is maintained, their legacy is carried forward, and that we work hard to restore and to set up a long-term preservation plan to ensure that we don't fall into disarray that has happened here. I've had done detailed reports about the conditions of the cemetery. In fact, when the first headstone I cleaned in there was the Richard Dickinson headstone because I'm a trustee on the Dickinson School Trust. In fact, that was in 2017. Dave was over there as Deacon Saul Fowler, who was your first cousin, 5 times removed?
Something like that, yeah.
And since then, I've cleaned that headstone, and then if you look back at a photo when we were portraying it, and you see this young man leaning against that tree.
Yes.
And you see that tree was overtaken, growing into a headstone.
Yes.
Well, that tree is no longer there, and Saul Fowler's headstone has been cleaned. It still has a long way to go. But what we have here is that we have close to 60 veterans that are interred in that cemetery, including one that fought in the colonial wars, a number of the American Revolutionary War, and a lot of those veterans from 1776 their headstones are in fragments on the ground or not even standing there. Which is being, I think is really shameful, and I think it's our responsibility to do something about that. And I'm hoping that the CPC will support me so that we can do something about that. I had a professional stone conservator come down and spent 6.5 hours with me, as well as with the sexton of the cemetery, and went over through the whole thing. I've got pricing from her. She'll do two days of a workshop to train us how to fix most of those types of headstones, contingent that the cemetery workers are available to help us and that we have enough sufficient volunteers to participate. There's a good number of headstones in there that is far beyond the capability of any of our volunteers to be able to fix, such as the sandstones in there. There's all kinds of cracks in them. They're fragmenting. In fact, what I'd like to do is leave this with you so you'll have the complete idea and the picture of, you'll see that in that report that was done last summer. I think it gives a total of 279 headstones with serious issues. Well, I can assure you that number's increased because continual problems exist since then. Last year, there was a couple trees that fell down, took out 3 headstones. I did a report, provided that to the Cemetery Commission and to the Finance Board, and they got the money and they went in there and they cleared out a whole bunch of trees. So thank God that happened, because if it didn't happen, the damage would be a heck of a lot more. There's a lot. I've cleaned well over 60 headstones in that old cemetery. I've been in there almost every single day when the weather cooperates, doing work, as well as in bad days, gone in there, collecting the GPS coordinates on those particular monuments. I've taken hundreds of photographs. I've put it in, updated the database, and documenting, updating Find a Grave, so that we have an opportunity to really do something good here, get it done, and the database stuff will be out there forever. And certainly we don't want to fall in these conditions again. So my hope, well, there's 43 sandstone monuments that are in the back and the front where they're delimited, the faces come off. Lee Hamburg's been absolutely phenomenal, bringing stuff over. I've scanned it, given it back, because when they did the stuff in 1975, 1977 for the bicentennial, my late neighbor Eldon Johnson did phenomenal work. After they were done, they may not have repaired them correctly, but there was no leaners. There was only a couple of broken headstones in that cemetery. If Eldon was around today, he would be really upset about how those conditions are deteriorated. And so I'm pleading to let's fix this, and let's not let this happen in the past. The cemetery workers have done some phenomenal work this past year, and we ought to be proud of the good work that they do in that cemetery, because I've been in a lot of cemeteries and no one takes as good care of it as they have in the new cemetery. We did a lot of work in the old cemetery this past year. It's probably in the best shape that it's ever been in, other than a good number of years ago. We got a baseline of what was there before from photos that were taken and put out there in Find a Grave 10 years ago. So if you do a comparison, looking back 10 years ago, such as the Granger Monument where a trim came down, took out fencing, fortunately, it didn't smash any of it. But all this damage has recurred and currently happened. I've done all kinds of research as far as like the National Park Service. So we know, and then of course, DCR's done beautiful stuff with historic burial grounds and preservation guidelines. So we're following all the best practices. The stone conservator that I've been working with is by far the best. If we don't take advantage and get her to work soon, we're not going to have access to her, and nothing will happen in that old cemetery, because the work that I've been doing in there, and I fixed a few, it's only a Band-Aid solution. the things are gonna fall apart a lot faster than me and a few volunteers can repair it. So, my hope is that looking at $40,000 for the first 2 years, there's the equipment that we need to buy, such as a tripod, a chain lift, and other different things so we can lift the monuments up so that people don't get hurt, other little safety equipment. The D2 biological solution is very expensive. I figure at least 110 gallons a year for these first 2 years. That alone is almost $4,000 for each year. That's equipment, never mind the safety equipment, and then like the different types of mortar is very expensive on this. So I'm very comfortable that the majority of those issues can be fixed, except for those sandstones that are delaminated, because it takes further research to find out what was inscribed on those, and then see whether we can get those fixed. Otherwise, they'll be lost in history, and we don't want that to happen.
So Jim, you're looking for 40,000?
40,000.
Have you got a
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's pricing in the back.
Okay, you've got a project right up?
Yeah, everything's all in the back. What you'll see in there is $33,000 from the conservator, including the 2 days of training, but it doesn't include any of the D2 solution I just mentioned about, which would be about $8,000 on top of that, so that exceeds that. But also, too, is that we've been raising money. In fact, the American Legion Post 338 here in town, they contributed $350 towards the project. I've donated, in addition to time, I donated $200 for buying 5 gallons of D2 and other different stuff. So I assure you that if this goes favorable,
So you
we'll.
say this is a 2-year project, it'll take 2 years?
2 years,
Or is this going to be
yeah.
ongoing?
Well, we're going to have recurring maintenance that needs to happen. So, for example, the biggest hazard in there is trees. Those trees are, they weren't originally there. You have all these spruce that just, the limbs are coming down, they drop the sap, and they stain the monuments. There's, like on the back, on the north road that goes along the side, there's a lot of site work that needs to happen because there's a retaining wall where there was no drill holes, there was no draining, erosion, so it's falling apart.
This is for the first round of everything that's been identified
Right.
that needs to be fixed. But
Right.
Do you have a website so for volunteers and stuff? I was just curious.
Yeah, but there's a Facebook site.
It's a Facebook.
We have some folks lined up to work with us. And,
I've done this before, that's why I was asking. I've done-
It's Friends of Southwick Old Cemetery, Facebook.
Gene, have you prepared a CPC application?
No, I have not.
Okay, so this, right now, the 40,000 is a good, you feel is a good estimate?
Yes.
And that's spread over 2 years?
2 years. And then, in the course of 2 years, we should be able to have done enough research about on those sandstones or brownstones that are delaminated and know who those people are, and then see what we can do and get some type of estimates right.
Well, this is certainly one of those projects that the Historical Commission is very eager to see the CPC funds get applied to, because it fits our charter for the use of our historical portion of this perfectly. And we have not had any significant expenditures for historical out of the CPC account for several years, so we're sitting on $100,000 today in that account, so we can more than cover this 40,000, spread over the 2 years with no problem at all. But I'm going to, we can put together some form of motion today to proceed for purposes of getting this on the warrant. I'd be very comfortable with that. But we do need to get the CPC application package so that the Historical Commission itself can vote on it prior to, and approve. I'm fairly confident we'll get approval. So
Where can I find the CPC application?
We'll get that.
Sid, do you have the CPC applications?
I don't have it on me.
No, okay, but I mean, you
But I
have
think-
them available at your desk?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think this is a wonderful start because I'm also curious whether there's been a historical inventory accomplished in the town of Southwick. For example, was there a historic inventory done of the old cemetery? Because I spoke with the conservator saying about whether the old cemetery would fit as far as being added to the National Register of Historic Places. And she said certainly it would. And so if we looked upon trying to get this added to the list of National Historic Places, then it opens up other different grants towards preservation.
What about DAR too?
Yeah.
Would that help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of your Revolutionary Soldiers in there?
Yeah, there's quite a few on there.
Yeah, actually I have one in there.
Yeah, I think the best inventory I've seen so far is the information that Lee Hamburg has, which is very dated from, I think, the Watt Davis records, and that's what we used when we went around to put markers on the gravestones of those people that had served in the military.
Which there are some discrepancies.
Yes, I'm sure there is. So there certainly would be.
You can see from that book where they put in all those interned that I visit each and every one of them.
Yeah. I'm sure a good inventory undertaking would also be welcome as part of this.
Well, the good news is it's in a database now. Thank you very much.
I'll just,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion for the 40,000.
Full disclosure, my wife is on the cemetery commission. I'm going to recuse myself from this vote.
I second the motion.
Any questions? No? Do you have any
No?
questions?
Any discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jane.
Great.
Thank you, Gene.
Thanks, Gene.
I look forward to working with you all in the future.
Rather than get involved with the Community Preservation Coalition program, I'd like a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Tabled. Okay. Franklin Land Trust has a request in for $1.2 million for a funding application. Can you come up?
Good evening. Hello. Thank you for having us tonight.
No problem.
So we were encouraged to submit this application to give the town options. If the CPC were to approve this tonight, then the taxes would not go up on folks in the town because money would be coming out of future obligations of CPC funding. And we wanted to be able to give the town that option should the petition warrant pass tomorrow night. Obviously, if it doesn't pass tonight, then there's only one option, which would be to bond out on general town revenues, which would increase people's taxes. So that's why we put the application in forward. So.
Okay. Any questions from anyone?
So this is, I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
This is in addition to the 1 million that we have put aside for you guys, and for the 500,000 that's going to be up to vote tomorrow night, correct?
That's correct.
So it'll be a total of 2.7 million from the CPC.
That's correct.
If this gets passed.
Although the 1.2 would be out of future obligations, bonded against those future obligations, as opposed to being bonded out of regular town revenues. And I'm not a financial expert like you, Bob, but that's my understanding.
You're very charitable.
And you went to the landowner?
Yes.
And she would not?
No. again, she believes that she's already bargained sale the property. So no.
And I
I'll
think
make the motion to bond for 1.2.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I just look at this as a great opportunity because there is a petition before the town to bond through the general fund. And this would alleviate that tax burden from the townspeople and use taxes that are put aside for this purpose. I know this is a great deal of money, and other towns have used this to bond for properties because of great expenses it is to buy parcels like this. So this is not unprecedented. And I want to just make sure that everybody understands that, yes, this is a lot of money, but it is worth it. This is something that the town's wanted for a long time, and I think this is a great use for CPC funding.
If we don't approve this, the bond against the CPC, the warrant article that it goes before the town tomorrow night will be to take that money out of the general fund, which would raise the taxes.
Correct.
If we vote to approve it for vote at the special warrant meeting, we're really essentially giving the town two choices. One, to bond it against the CPC where it does not impact the annual property tax. And should that fail, then the second vote would be taken up to bond against the town, which would impact property tax.
That's my understanding.
So if we approve this tonight, we're more or less giving ourselves an opportunity to vote tomorrow night on the lesser of the two evils when it comes to property tax impact.
Because my understanding is the, look at you, Michelle, the petition, the warrant related to the petition, is agnostic as to where the money comes from. It's basically allowed to be taken from any place. If this vote passes tonight with this committee, then obviously I think the most logical place for the town to look for that funding would be through bonding through the CPC fundings, which would not affect the taxes. If the petition warrant passes tomorrow night and this vote fails tonight, then there will only be one option, and that would be to take it out of general, bond against general revenues, which would increase taxes.
I just want to make sure everybody also understands that this comes just from the taxes raised from the town. It doesn't consider the matching funds because those aren't guaranteed as to what rate we get from the state. So those funds will still come in, and we'll still be able to use those for other projects as well from the state. So it's not using all of the funding from CPC that we have. It's only utilizing the 3% that's already being levied on the taxpayers.
So what is the annual payment?
We don't know what we're considering as far as term.
The numbers I got, again, were on a 5-year bond. The interest was 5%, and it was about a total interest of about $186,000 at 5 years. And then at 30 years, interest rate was about 4%, and that was the total cost to the town of about $750,000, I think, $800,000, somewhere right around there.
That's an interest, but I'm looking at it
Yearly.
annually. So we take in approximately $400,000 from taxes and from matching. We've got to put about about $80,000 of that has to go into low income and historical.
That's already taken out. Before this says this is already taken out. So available funding, we have about $233,000 a year, not counting the housing, not counting historical, not counting administrative. That's already been taken out.
Is a payment $50,000 a year, $100,000?
Well, that again depends on the term of the bond, how long we want to take it for.
Because
So-
I'm concerned about future projects.
Right, so-
Because 15 to 30 years
Right,
out,
the longer
we have
we-
no idea what's
Right.
coming down the pipeline.
Right, so we would be able to utilize the open space funding and part of the what do you want to call it, not the general fund, but the unreserved funds. We'd be able to use some of that, depending on what the term of the loan is. would determine how much of that we need to use. The longer we spread it out, the more we'll have for other projects. So that's, I think the Finance Committee and the Select Board said that they were going to be figuring it out as far as best use for what they wanted to have for term. That was my understanding.
So how much money have you raised from the town and other private institutions? What's the breakdown?
Right now, we have about $275,000 that we have raised. Some of what we raised had to cover some expenses that we've incurred. So we've had to pay for the option agreements with the owners, with the owner, and some other expenses that we've agreed to cover in order to have her agree to extend the option. It was originally a 1-year option. It turned out to really be a 3-year option. So we've incurred some significant expenses doing this project, and so some of the funds that we've raised have gone to cover those expenses because we don't have a huge big pot of money ourselves as an organization. Wish we did, but we don't.
States also put in $1 million towards the 85 acres that they already preserved.
Yep.
They have another $600,000 waiting to put towards the conservation restriction, and they awarded a land grant to the town of Southwick for $400,000. So in total, the state will be putting in $2 million towards this project.
Right.
And that money that we have raised is over 300 individuals and businesses and small grants that we have applied for. So this is not, it might sound like a small amount compared to the entire pot of $5 million, but when you go after $50,000 grants and $100,000 grants and you don't get them all, and you have bake sales and golf tournaments and fishing derbies and mailings and people standing out on the street and people talking to their neighbors, that amount of money is a lot to raise, and this is not for us. All this money is just going right back into the town to own this piece of property forever and ever for their kids, for the water, for the watershed, for the wildlife, so you can go and have some quiet, shaded place to hike. So it's not for us, we're just...
We would have preferred to be able to go out and raise more of it from private sources. That was sort of our vision when we began this 3 years ago. But it didn't work out. We've turned over every possible rock out there to look for funding. And so really, we didn't choose to do this as our first option. But we do feel that this is I've done this work for years, and I look back on some of the properties I've conserved 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, and it blows my mind. At the time, it seemed like a ton of money. It blows my mind how little it looks like today. What a deal we got 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago. And I guarantee you that this town will look back in 10, 15, 20 years and look back on this project and go, I can't believe we got it for that amount of money.
I don't think so.
Because the values, they don't make land anymore, and the values keep going up. They don't go down. So,
Elaine, you said that the state has $2 million into this project.
The state will have $2 million.
In the aggregate. They've already spent $1 million on the 84 acres, which is done and
Right,
put to
of the
bed.
total $5 million cost of this property, $1 million they had to spend, because that was in their budget to lose if they didn't spend
Right.
it in 2017. $600,000 is waiting to be spent for the conservation restriction. Another $400,000 is waiting to be used through the land grant that Dennis and I applied for, that is a reimbursement. So you do it and you get it back. So in total, the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, is putting $2 million into this project.
and just going to the point about value, there are parts of the state where land trusts like us are working to conserve land an acre at a time for millions of dollars per acre at a time. And they're doing that because they didn't invest years ago in conserving open space, and they're scrambling to try to conserve the few pieces that are left available. And there are large parts of the state where that is happening right now. So I know this seems like a lot of money, but in the scheme of things, and it is a lot of money, but in the scheme of things, it is going to be, it's an amazing opportunity and investment that this town could be making in this property. And people are going to decide which towns to live in and raise their kids in down the road, not just based upon schools and what the roads are like. They're going to be looking at things like quality of life. And this is a quality of life issue for people in this town, so.
There is one waterfront lot available on Middle Pond. It has 100 feet of frontage. It's 1.2 acres. It's selling on the market for $325,000. So 62 acres with 3,000 feet of road frontage, 3,000 feet of lake frontage could easily fetch the funding. I mean, that's 1 acre. That's you sitting there and looking at your neighbor, you know, and putting up fences so you don't smell the barbecue. This is 62 acres with 3,000 feet of lakefront, and it is an enormously valuable property. And the idea that this is not worth this money, 10 lots of, or, you know, $400,000 a piece, right there.
And
It's done, you know, for lots.
And I noticed earlier with Ron here and Tom, you were looking at an appraisal for that project, and I noticed it's an O'Connor appraisal. And you were looking at it, and you're totally trusting it's that it was accurate. No one was ever arguing that the numbers weren't good. And that's the appraiser who did the appraisal for this project, O'Connor Real Estate. And they did it the exact same way as was done for that APR. So to argue in one case that's a valid appraisal.
Values are going up.
Yep.
Right?
And values are going up.
Value went up
So-
in a year on that APR.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
it's a reflection of the pressures in this town. So that's our.
It's still conceptual.
I didn't think we could talk.
Tom, it is. It's a hypothetical subdivision. That's how they do it. Otherwise, they would have to go out and get all the permits and put their plans in place and do all of that.
Okay.
Appraisals are always hypothetical.
But then a prudent buyer
But-
still wants it at a discount from there, even though it's.
No, because that's built into the appraisal.
Okay, don't engage the rest
I
of the
know.
people. Okay,
Okay.
all right.
You have saved
As I say, a
8
prudent
acres.
buyer.
You gotta talk
80 acres
into
worth of
it.
service.
Stop
So
talking.
that's successful.
That is successful. The vernal pool and the forested
I don't care if I
wetland.
get mine or not. I have nothing to gain.
Can you explain a little more the $800,000 that was taken from the state's portion and moved to the town's portion?
You can't look at it that way because it's one project. And it was one appraisal, it was one project. That's the money that the state had at the time. And if we hadn't done that at that time, that $1 million would have disappeared and gone away, and then we really would have been coming back here we'd be coming back here for even more than that. So, you know, these projects are fluid, they roll along. You never know what's going to happen. We were all of a sudden put in a position of having to make a very quick decision whether or not to take that $1 million at the time or not.
And we do also have the state now paying for the conservation restriction for $600,000.
And the
They're
land
going to be
grant,
doing
and
that.
it's really all coming out of the same pot when they allocate. There's different ways that they can allocate that money. We applied for, they applied for a land grant and got $400,000. They spent the $1 million on that. They have money that is used for endangered species impacts, and they were able to, you know, allocate $600,000. Now, that was not going to go and get worked on in the 2017 acquisition. The timing of that was such that it had to come to this side of the project, the other half of it. So in total, you are still looking at another $1 million coming from the state, and we have to look at that in total. They're not putting any more in. Now, if they weren't putting any more in, and we were here saying we need a total of $4 million, of which we want it all to come from the town, I understand that. But there's another $1 million still that the state is putting into this. So it's the mechanics of just the way this has to lay out that it had to happen during this next phase.
And just on John's point about future costs, the town will own this land and has total control over how it's going to be used. There might be a visioning process where it would look, having some sort of a composting toilet system or parking area or something like that would be a great thing, but that is not something that's baked into the project right now. It's going to be totally up to the town to make those decisions on how much they want to spend on this property. I mean, as far as we're concerned, once it's conserved, it's open land, it's natural land, it's wildlife habitat, and if you chose to do nothing but keep the trails open so people can walk on it, that would be totally fine. It's the town's decision, totally the town's decision.
There's also great grants out there to help with exactly things like that, like trail building, erosion, parking, even probably a composting toilet. So there's things out there that we already committed to being happy to help the town in applying for those that are state funding. They like to see that if it increases accessibility for people. Nice, safe, well-marked trails, all those things are available. So there's opportunities. Nobody has to start automatically spending $6,000 a year to put porta potties out there. Think of it's a natural area, and you decide how, within the guidelines of the conservation restriction, how many amenities you put on it. So it's not a have to do.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
John, you made a motion, right? You seconded it? Okay. No other discussion? Okay. So all those in favor of the application for $1.2 million bonding, please say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hands, if I can get a count. And all those opposed to the bonding? Motion does not pass.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you.
And then Dave said yes.
Can you explain what your objections are? Is there enough project that you have to spend?
I know, right?
This is how it is going. Just go through
I'm just concerned, Bob, we just gave a guy $115,000 for his property for one person. This is for a town. It's concerning to me. Why we can't let them decide what they want to do with their money. It's
They
not.
can decide tomorrow night. It's overpriced.
I don't think so. I disagree with that.
I know you don't, but I think it's overpriced.
You don't think that guy's property is overpriced? How many houses can go on his property? We don't even know that. We didn't even ask him the questions. Nobody's concerned about that, but yet we're debating over these little picking things about this one property.
No, we're all here.
He's got the same amount of acreage as this parcel, 58 acres versus 61 acres.
Right.
But they're asking for $2 million.
This is
Well,
for
this is
person.
over-
This is
then
for
it's gonna be over
public
3 million.
use. That's for his own use. That's for him alone, for one person. This is for the public.
Hey, we can,
Okay.
we can do the vice chair, everybody's here.
Yep. All right, so we're going to,
You guys need us for Friday?
Probably not. Not-
Just ready, thank you.
no, I think we're good. Thank you very much for being here. See you later.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Ben. No, well, we had this vice chair. All right. Yeah, she left, so I'm not gonna do this. All right, so I'm gonna table this till another meeting. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
What's that?
Take a motion to
Make a
adjourn.
motion, Chris Pratt be the VP here.
John, we're not gonna do that because we're back to 8. Maria left.
For what?
We're back to 8 people.
Why did she leave?
She left.
You know, I'm gonna tell you, this whole board is a farce. The shit that's been pulled, I've never been so disappointed in so many people before, especially you.
I'd like to have a conversation with you about that, Dave.
think you'd be having that. Ever.
Don't we have a quorum to continue?
No, not anymore.
Yeah, but we're not gonna bother with it because
All right.
the only thing we're gonna
Can we
do.
just do the adjourning then?
Yeah, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Yeah.
Just- Okay.
Not in favor.